Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are diving headfirst into a topic that has had people talking for centuries, the Bible Code. The idea that there are these hidden messages, prophecies, maybe even a look into the future, all woven right into the text of the Bible.
Yeah, it really is an idea that has captured imaginations for centuries. It's like this amazing blend of ancient scripture and modern technology with, a little dash of mystery thrown in for good measure.
It's like something right out of one of those Dan Brown novels.
Yeah.
It really taps into that desire we all have to find meaning, to find patterns in things, and especially in something that is as revered as the Bible.
Oh, absolutely. And what's really interesting is the way that these messages are supposedly encoded. The people who believe in the Bible code claim that they find these messages by using what's called equidistant letter sequences, or ELS.
So for those of us who aren't exactly code breakers, what does that actually mean? Like, how does that work?
Well, it's basically the belief that if you skip letters in a really specific pattern in the Hebrew text of the Bible, you can spell out these hidden words and phrases.
Wow, so it's like this giant ancient cryptogram? That's really cool. I know some pretty wild predictions have been made using this Bible code too. I remember reading about the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. That was one of the ones that people said was foretold in the code. And I remember thinking that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the most famous examples, and it really did get a lot of people interested in this whole idea. You have some people who think these messages are like divine revelations, and then there are others who think it might point to something extraterrestrial. There's really no shortage of speculation.
Oh, for sure. But before we get too deep into this, maybe we should try to be a little critical too, right?
Absolutely. The scientific community tends to be pretty skeptical about the Bible code, and they have some good reasons for that skepticism.
Okay, so what are the arguments against it?
Well, one of the biggest things is that the Bible is just a really, really long book. By pure chance alone, you're going to find some groups of letters that spell out different words. It's kind of like when you look at clouds and you start to see shapes in them. Our brains are just designed to look for those patterns even when they're not actually there.
Right, so are you saying it's all just coincidence?
Not necessarily, but it's important to remember that the way that these messages are found can be really subjective. There's no one right way to do it, and that means researchers have a lot of freedom to choose where they start, how many letters they skip, even how big of a grid they use.
So you're saying they could basically force the code to say whatever they wanted?
Yeah, that's a big criticism. Critics say that you can basically tweak things until you get the Bible code to predict just about anything, and that makes a lot of people question if it's really legitimate.
You might be surprised to hear this, but there are even researchers out there who say they've found messages in the Bible code about things like the moon landing or the invention of the internet.
Oh yeah, for sure. But one of the main problems with these discoveries is that they often pop up after the event has already happened. It's a lot easier to connect the dots when you already know what the picture is supposed to look like.
It's like saying that you predicted the lottery numbers after you've seen them.
Exactly. And another issue is that no one else has been able to verify these findings. No one else has been able to use those same scientific methods and come up with the same results.
So it sounds like we have this really interesting clash between the idea of this hidden code, maybe even a message from God, and then all these scientific arguments that make people doubt if it's real.
Right, and what I think is really fascinating is that this goes way beyond just the Bible. This is about how we look at information in our world today. Especially with so much information out there, how do we figure out what's real and what's just noise?
You're right, that's such a good point. We're bombarded with information from every direction these days. How do we know what to believe?
Well, that's where critical thinking is so important. The Bible code is a great example, whether you believe in it or not, of how we need to think carefully about the information we're given.
So this isn't just about an ancient book, it's about how we are smart about the information we encounter in the world.
You got it. It's about developing the tools we need to navigate all of this information.
That's really interesting. Let's dig into some specific examples and see what we can learn.
As I was looking through all of this stuff about the Bible code, one of the things that really stood out to me was the role of technology in all of this. Like, on the one hand, computers have given us these amazing tools to analyze huge amounts of data, way more than we could ever do on our own.
Right. I mean, the Bible is a pretty big book, so using some kind of program to find these patterns makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, those same tools can be used to manipulate that data too. You can adjust the settings, you can change the starting point, even filter the results to basically get the software to find whatever you're looking for.
So it's almost like technology is a double-edged sword when it comes to this. Like it can help us find these patterns, but it can also be used to trick us into seeing patterns that aren't really there.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to look beyond the technology itself and ask the right questions about the way it's being used. Like, what methods are the researchers using? What are their goals?
It's a good reminder that no matter how advanced the technology is, it's still people who are using it. And people can make mistakes. People can be biased.
That's right. And that brings us back to critical thinking. When you hear about some new discovery in the Bible code, don't just assume it's true. Think about it. Ask yourself, did anyone else verify this? Are the methods clear? Are the researchers being open about the limitations of their study and the potential for bias?
So it's all about being a savvy consumer of information, whether it's about the Bible code or really anything else.
Exactly. And that is becoming a more and more valuable skill as we get more and more information thrown at us all the time.
So we've talked about the science, and we've talked about how people might be manipulating the data. But why do you think this idea is so popular to begin with? What is it about the Bible code that gets people so interested?
That's a really great question, and I think the answer goes beyond just science and gets into more of the psychology and culture behind this. There are probably a few things going on here.
What kinds of things?
Well, for one thing, people have always been really interested in the unknown. We like to feel like our lives have meaning and purpose. And this idea that there are secret messages out there, that there's some hidden knowledge we can uncover, even that we can see into the future, that's really appealing to a lot of people.
It's almost like we can't help but try to find patterns and connections in things, even when they might not be there.
That's right. And the Bible, with its long history and its importance to so many people, it makes sense that people would look for those deeper meanings in it. For a lot of people, that idea that there might be more to the Bible than what we see on the surface is really powerful.
It's like a spiritual treasure hunt. And for some people, maybe it even gives them a sense of comfort, like they have some control.
I think that's a big part of it. If you believe that these hidden messages are showing us a plan, a destiny, it can make a world that often feels chaotic and random feel more orderly.
It's like having a sneak peek at what's going to happen. But that brings up another question.
Yeah.
What if, and I know this is a big if, but what if there was a code in the Bible, a real one that we could prove was there?
Oh, that would really change things. That would make us rethink everything we know about free will, about destiny, maybe even about reality itself.
It makes you wonder if the most important part of the Bible code isn't about the messages themselves. Maybe it's about the questions that it makes us ask.
Exactly. Questions about what it means to be human, about what we can know, and about how we figure out what's true and what's not.
I love that. Even if the Bible code isn't real, it still makes us think about some really important things.
And it reminds us to be skeptical, to look for evidence, to not just believe something because we want it to be true.
You know, the more we talk about this, the more I realize just how much the Bible code connects to so many other things going on in the world.
Yeah, it's not just some weird thing from the past. It's something that can teach us how to be better thinkers and how to navigate this world that's full of information.
So as we start to wrap up our deep dive into the Bible code, you know, I keep thinking about all the different ways we've looked at it.
It really has been a journey from those equidistant letter sequences to the debate about if it's even real.
We talked about why those hidden messages are so fascinating and how we can trick ourselves into seeing patterns, and of course how important critical thinking is in a world where we have so much information coming at us.
And we talked about how something that seems like it's just about the Bible actually connects to bigger ideas about technology and psychology and how people search for meaning.
Exactly. And even if we don't know for sure if the Bible code is real or not scientifically, I still think we learned some valuable things from looking at it.
Oh, I completely agree. One thing that really stands out to me is how it shows us that humans are just drawn to patterns. We can't help but look for connections and meaning even when we're looking at something random.
It's like our brains are always trying to put the pieces together to understand the world around us, even if it means sometimes we see things that aren't really there.
That's a great way to put it. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, it's what helps us make new discoveries in science and create art, but it can also lead us to believe things that aren't true.
So it's all about finding that balance between being curious and being skeptical, being open to new ideas, but also knowing when to ask questions and look for proof.
Absolutely. And the Bible Code is a really good example of how to do that.
One thing I find really interesting is how the Bible code plays into that sense of wonder that we all have. It's like a big mystery with all this intrigue and speculation.
It speaks to those big questions that we all have, like
Right.
what's our purpose? What's going to happen in the future?
It makes you think that maybe the real point of the Bible code isn't the messages themselves, but the questions it makes us ask.
The big questions like where do we fit in the universe and what can we really know and how do we even tell what's true?
I like that. It's a good reminder that there's still so much out there that we don't know, and sometimes the journey of trying to figure things out is just as important as actually finding the answers.
Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We've talked about the history and the science and the psychology and what the Bible Code means for our culture.
We looked at the arguments for and against it, and we saw how this idea is relevant to how we think about information and how we learn to think critically in this digital world we live in.
But now it's your turn. What do you think about all of this? Do you think the Bible Code is real? Is it just something people made up? Or is it somewhere in between?
We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts and your questions and your own ideas about the Bible code with us. We're always excited to keep the conversation going and to hear different perspectives.
So until next time, keep searching, keep asking questions, and keep on diving deep.